So story takes place in 2007. It was and still is the only paranormal experience I have ever had. I was working at a TV station in a small town. I'm not going to say which one, but you may be able to figure it out with the details I provide. Don't really give a damn if you want to try to figure it out. I worked as a master control operator on the late shift. The station I worked in was creepy as hell for a couple reasons. Firstly, the building was old as hell. A lot of the structure of the building used for storage and the area where the transmitter was just in absolutely horrible condition. Cracks in walls, broken lights, exposed wiring, etc. In retrospect, it was probably actually pretty dangerous. The other reason this building was so creepy was that at one point in the 70s, it freaking burned down, and it was rumored that several people died in the fire. I have never been able to confirm this, though I've been told specific names of the deceased. Being the cheap bastards the family that owned the place were, instead of rebuild all of the building, they kept part of the damn thing that stayed up and rebuilt a new part onto the remaining standing part. When I worked there, the original part of the building was now entirely condemned and all but falling down. There were 2 floors of the original building. A huge room that used to be a bowling alley, and an upstairs part that was used entirely for storage of old files and records. Now, I don't know exactly why there was a bowling alley as part of the old TV station, but I also know that they used to do a local wrestling show there as well. I guess TV stations just did weird shit in the 70s. Anyway, this condemned portion of the building was the creepiest part of it. The bowling alley was frozen in time. Covered in dust, everything still there. Damn, I even found old scorecards in shoe cubbies when I went exploring in there on the nights and weekends. Pick related, it's the station. The bowling alley was completely cut off from power. It had no light except for sunlight through dusty windows and cracks in the wall. At night, a flashlight was the only light in that pitch black ass area. It was creepy. The only noises heard in there were sounds of dripping water. It's worth mentioning that it was pretty much an unspoken rule that everyone understood that we weren't supposed to go in there. The only 2 doors to access it were behind the front desk and through a locked door in the copy room. I was like 18 at the time. I didn't give a damn. I went back there when I was alone or when the skeleton crew was working. Sometimes me and some production and news people would go back there and explore. Like I said, this place was frozen in time. Upstairs, along with the files, we found boxes of old records. Like music records. Michael Jackson LPs and such, stuff that might have been worth some money. There were plenty of reasons to take people exploring over there. So, that's some history, onto the experience. I was working the sign-off shift one night as usual. The usual procedure was that at midnight, everyone except Master Control screwed off. Production, the remaining engineer, the news people all left around midnight. I was generally alone in the building until 2 to 3 a.m. until the station signed off. On this particular night, my buddy came up to the station to hang out with me. We'll call him Dan for convenience sake. I had people come chill up there pretty often. Friends liked checking out the station, and there wasn't crap to do but kill time. So it's about midnight and me and Dan are chilling watching whatever stupid stuff was on air at the time, likely Bones or Family Feud or something gay. I start telling him about the bowling alley. I hype some crap up about how the people that died in the fire haunt that area and decide we can go ghost hunting. Pick, control room, it will come in handy in a later post for orientation. So I decide it's safe to let the automation just run for a while and we can leave the control room and go exploring. I take Dan or Dave or whatever the hell his name is for a tour around the outside of the building first, showing him how messed up it is. There were literally transmission lines going up to the tower that were held up on supports built on crumbling sheetrock. There was a sticker on a door that was bolted shut to the bowling alley that read "Watch for overhead wires, you can be killed." God damn, that place was jank. Anyway, I give Dan the usual tour I've given to like 5 people by now. Usually it was bitches because bitches love a brave man in a scary as hell place. We go back there with flashlights and the walkie-talkies, and the whole time we're trying to contact spirits of the deceased with our walkie-talkies. Listening for voices, interference, etc. Didn't really get anything but some static, but it's a TV station, what did I expect? We were back there for probably all of a half an hour, and we went back to the control room to resume being lazy. Some time goes by and a walkie-talkie that I had left on started making some pretty messed up noises. Definitely sounded like a really deep and staticky voice. Didn't think much of it because once again, TV station. Lots of equipment / signals. Humored this and tried to talk to what or whoever it was. Push button and talk into mic asking if anyone is there. Keep hearing something, but indistinguishable. Now this set of walkie-talkies made that very generic bloop sound every time you pushed the button to talk. After a few minutes of trying to talk to what I thought was nothing, the walkie-talkie started making that bloop noise all on its own. What the hell? Maybe the dude on the other end is trying to use Morse or something because we can't hear each other very well. Pick up mic and talk and say if you can hear me, beep once for yes. Bloop. Pick, transmitter room. We grab the second walkie-talkie and tune it to the same channel and nothing is happening. Not only is this only happening to one walkie-talkie, but we cannot make the second walkie-talkie simulate that same bloop noise on the other. Pushing the button is literally the only way to get the thing to make that damn noise. This was the first moment when I went into okay, maybe something is actually happening here mode. Start asking things like, is anyone there, beep once, if you can hear me, beep once, if you're in the building, beep once. It would beep once every single time. Also, it would not beep if you didn't say anything. It literally only responded when prompted. It was not Dan freaking with me. He was right next to me in plain view, other walkie-talkie was off. Set walkie-talkie down on the table. No one is touching it. Say out loud, if anyone can hear me, beep once. Bloop. Nope. Motherfucking JPage. Dan and I run out of the room. We search the newsroom, studio, hallways, bathrooms, transmitter rooms, offices, parking lot, everywhere for people. No one. I get up to the entry room where the front desk / bowling alley door was. Bowling alley door is wide open. I closed and locked that damn thing. I always did. Every time. This is where I began to go into panic and events are a little less clear. Pick, another shot of the control room conveniently with the ring picture up. This can be seen in last pick too. Dan and I head back to the control room and shut all the doors so no one could hear inside the room. Walkie-talkie lays silently on the desk by the board. Ask again if it's in there. Bloop. Ask if it can see me. Bloop. Decide that maybe someone could still be tricking me and is listening in on me somehow. Decide to see if this thing can really see me. I stand in front of the board and face the monitor wall. If I'm facing the monitor wall, beep twice. Bloop, bloop. No. Freaking way. This was the first time this thing had beeped twice. I tum 180 degrees. If I'm facing the monitor wall, beep twice, if I'm facing the racks, beep once. Bloop. I didn't believe it. I tested it again and again and again. Tuning to different orientations and asking for different numbers of beeps. It got it right. Every single time. I'm panicked. It's now like 2:20 a.m. and I haven't logged break times for over an hour. I can no longer do my job. I am so freaking terrified. At some point, Dan and I just accept that we are in contact with something otherworldly. I ask it if it came out of the bowling alley. It did. I ask if it died in the fire. It did not. I asked it if there was a God. It said there was. Now, Last time I told this story people said herder your story was good until you got to this part confirmed for fake FGT. I don't really care, I'm not going to omit it cause it freaking happened. As I am shifting into this new and terrifying worldview based on the experience I'm having. I ask if there is a hell. Balup. Are you in hell? Balup. On a scale of 1 to 10 by number of beeps, how bad is hell? Balup 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 balup. It wouldn't stop. I start crying. Pick, behind rack in control room. I don't remember how many times it beeped before it finally stopped. I tried to calm down, and pretty much at this point ignore the walkie-talkie and stop asking questions and start replaying crap with Dan and trying to come up with explanations, and catch up with my work. It's getting close to sign-off time so I start with my close-up shop procedures, etc. As I'm shutting some stuff off and talking to Dan, this thing starts beeping in series of 3. Just 3, pause. 3, pause. Over and over. Start trying to determine and ask it some important of 3. It's like 2:45 a.m. 3 o'clock. Balup. Sign off? Balup balup. No. Is something going to happen at 3 o'clock? Balup. Screw this. There is no way I'm going to be in this building. I set up the automation to automatically go to color bars after the national anthem and just go ahead and turn off the freaking transmitter 15 minutes early. Screw this walkie-talkie, turn the damn thing off and throw it on the charger. Dan and I go outside into the parking lot, he leaves. 3 a.m. comes. Nothing happens. Wait and see what happens because I have to go back inside to load the next day's playlist. Nothing. At like 3:02 I decide, scared as hell, to go back inside. As I'm walking back towards the door, I hit the deck after I heard an ear-shattering clank, wobble 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 kaboom. And then the sound of something freaking electrical like shorting out. The huge boom came from our main network receiver dish. The thing is like 30 feet in diameter and up on a huge robotic tripod. The thing somehow slipped out of lock and literally fell with all its weight, collapsing to the bottom position, facing the ground. I call my boss, the chief engineer immediately. One more time. Pick, behind the news set. Tells me he'll be there immediately. He lives right up the street so he'll be there in like 2 minutes. Follow sound of the shorting out sound. Find that between the building to the sheetrock wall, a freaking transmission line broke and is completely unrelated to the dish falling. That freaking sticker about overhead wires was not lying. Boss shows up. Tell him I was outside smoking when the thing fell. He proclaims. I have never seen anything like this before. We go in together to the sound of alarms related to the dish. I tell him about the transmission line, tell him the next day's guy will have to do the playlist because screw you I'm leaving. He literally does not give a damn and has bigger fish to fry. I get in my truck and hit the road. I call my buddy William who was always freaking up late as hell to tell him about what happened. As I am going over the events with him, out of the earpiece of the phone, and I kid you not, it goes balup, and we'll freaking heard it too. This is exactly how it freaking happened. Sorry if some of you bastards don't like it because it isn't nice and tidy and perfect like your made up skinwalker pastas, but this is how freaking crap went down. I still can't explain it to this day, and I never tell anyone because people freaking laugh. I come to tell /x/ and some of you will still nag about it. Well, file this damn story away under true pasta because I did not just type all of this crap up to just be dismissed. We'll be happy to answer questions if anyone has any. Pick, in the control room using panorama.
Probably not as good as the rest of these, but here's mine anyway. It's one of the reasons I started believing in the paranormal. Me 17 years old, 1993, in the middle of Nebraska near the Sandhills. We just had Christmas at my grandparents' farm in the middle of nowhere, like the next neighbor was about a mile away, middle of nowhere. Christmas was cool there. We got the entire extended family together, and there were like 40 people in the house exchanging gifts, singing songs, and doing the type of crap white people did on farms in the US in the 90s. Everyone goes home except for me. My grandparents were really old, and my grandfather could barely walk. My grandma could walk, but it was more of a shuffle, and she couldn't climb stairs. Family needed me to spend about a week taking care of my grandparents. Cool. No problem. I love old people, and I love my grandparents. Grandparents go to bed. I go upstairs to go to bed, but I'm not tired. I chill listening to my cassette player. It's how we had to listen to music before computers and MP3s. Listening to Nirvana's Nevermind and trying to go to sleep. Really happy because I love the solitude of my grandparents' farm, and I loved my family. I was basking in the fields that were left over from all people in the house. I hear someone come up the stairs, but think nothing of it because people were going up and down the stairs all day. This person opens the attic door and goes in. All of a sudden, it hits me. Shit me pants. JPG. I am the only person that should be in this house that can actually climb stairs. Holy crap. Someone broke in. Now, my grandma taught me to be a badass. I have literally seen this woman beautiful 2,000-pound bulls that were giving her crap. She was like 100 pounds. That mother-loving bull never screwed with her again. After she did that, she looked at my 9-year-old self and said, "Never be afraid of anything." Here's 17-year-old me, remembering that. Remembering my grandma and grandpa needed me to step up and defend them. I wasn't going to back down from anything. If someone broke into the house, I decided they were going to have to kill me before I would let them hurt my grandparents. I get up and grab my great uncle's baseball bat that was in my bedroom. I opened the attic, turned the light, and I was about to wreck some stuff up. Side note, that attic was always creepy AF. I never played in there and always avoided it as a kid. I ran roughshod over that farm and every building, but that attic. Screw that attic. Lee was always cold, even in the summer, and that house didn't have air conditioning. It was freaking creepy. Back to the story. Adrenaline was pumping. I was ready to kill. I've always trended toward the fight side of the fight or flight response anyway. I was kind of looking forward to a fight at this point. I opened the attic door. WFT? No one in the attic. Move some stuff around to see if someone is hiding. Still don't find someone. Screw it. They must have gone downstairs. I checked the rest of the upstairs rooms. No one there. Head downstairs with bat in hand. By this time, Grandma had shuffled into the living room and I turned the lights on. She wants to know why I'm making all the noise. I tell her someone is in the house. Grandma doesn't look excited at all. She just says, "Go back to bed. I'll tell you about it in the morning." Chills run down my spine. PNG. I don't believe her. I check the porch. Turn on the yard light. Go outside. Pitch black. Have a flashlight. Wind blowing. Check the tree line. Check behind the house. Nothing. No one at all. Not even tracks. Check the kitchen. Check the living room. Check in on my grandpa who was sleeping. Take a shit and a piss because I was downstairs anyway. Check on grandma. Ask her again how she knew no one was in the house. Again, she says, "Go to bed. I want you to be able to sleep," and refuses to tell me anything. I decide to trust her and make sure the doors are locked again. Then go back upstairs. Took me like 4 hours, but finally got to sleep at like 3 a.m. Wake up the next day. "Grandma, what the hell happened last night?" She said that she hasn't told anyone about it, but there are ghosts in the house. She said she didn't want to say anything because she was worried we would think she was going senile and put her in a rest home, what we used to call assisted living. But she said since I saw it, I didn't. I just heard it, that she felt like I should know. She made me promise not to tell anyone. I did and didn't, at least until she died. She said that she would often see an old, stern-looking man with a brim hat looking at her at the foot of her bed at night. There was always a weird glow around him. She usually just pulled the covers over her head and prayed the rosary and the man went away. She also said that when she would spread sheets on top of the bed, that they would come to rest upon the outline of a child, like a child was under the sheets. And when she picked up the sheets, the child wasn't there. She said she often heard noise coming from the attic in the night, but no one was in the house. This was a common occurrence. She told me if I heard it again to pray the rosary, and I did every night for the rest of the day when I went to bed. That was it. Never heard it again, but I remember this shit like it was yesterday. When they died a few years later, a neighbor bought the house and demolished it. I miss that farm and I miss my grandparents, but I'm kind of okay that the house isn't there anymore. The house was built around 1900 and someone once tried to put an apple orchard on it, but apples didn't really grow well in the sandhills. So my grandpa tore all of the trees out in the 1940s. I know my grandparents' first child, my oldest aunt, died in that house when she was 2. I think the child that my grandma saw was her. The old dude, I think, was a guy that committed suicide on an adjacent property during the Great Depression. My grandpa and grandma found his body. They eventually bought his farm and made it part of theirs, but his house still stood pretty close to theirs. They used it for storage. The old guy ghost could also have been the guy that built the house and planted the orchard around the turn of the century.
Late shift at call center. Just me and one other guy in the building. He takes a call that sounds like an old person who stayed up late and figured this would be the time to figure out their new laptop, while he's desperately trying to explain that we just support her internet connection, not her devices. I get that annoying freaking beep in my ear that tells me some a-hole is on the line. I give the usual opening line. Thanks for calling. This is Anon. Can I get your name and phone number? He asks. Hello? Crap, my mic is muted. No, it isn't. Hello? I ask back, briefly thinking about how odd it is that this is one of the very few questions that is appropriately responded to with the exact same question. He asks if this is company I work for. I say yes. Give the line again. Thanks for calling, etc. How can I help you? He says none of his electronics are working, and he thinks it's the internet. Ask for his house phone. Gives an area code I don't recognize. Type it in anyways because who am I to question a customer this early in the call? Nothing. Ask for his name, as he's likely screwed up the number. He gives me his name. I do the slow-ass search by name function. Ask about troubleshooting while it comes up. He says he doesn't know where his modem is because he can't leave his room. I ask, what does he mean? He says his door won't open, but the one time it did there was nothing but blackness. I only now am noticing how pronounced the static on the line was. I originally thought it to be a filtering issue with the phones and DSL line, which is a common occurrence, but this static was much more front and center. Search finishes. Nothing. Google his area code. Texas. We only support shit in Saskatchewan, Canada. He asks if I know why his family is gone. I ask him where he lives. Gives me a town in Texas. Ask him what the date is, claiming it's a security question. He says it's November 2011. It was August 2012. Coworker has finished his call at this point and clocked out as it was a couple minutes to midnight, which was the end of our shift. He's at my desk, making a face that says, "Why did you ask what the date was? And why do you look like someone shit in your ear?" I ask the guy on the other line when his internet stopped working. He says he thinks someone unplugged something because someone entered his house, and then the blackness came and nothing was working. After he says this, the line goes dead. I explain to my coworker what just freaking happened. He says to write down my ticket number and see if this guy calls back under the same number or what, so I write it down, and the guy's name as well, so I remember what the ticket was about. Jorge Vargas. Ask my supervisor to pull up the call, as they are all recorded. The next shift I have, she finds it. We listen to it at lunch. He call comes in. There's no caller ID. Everything is just like it happened that night except for one key detail. Am the only one talking. The other side of the line is dead air. No static or anything. My supervisor is really good-natured and has a good sense of humor and asks if this was a prank. Did I have someone call in from an unlisted number and do this? Try to convince her otherwise. Coworker later vouches that I was really scared looking. Only coworker believes me. Really? Google search Jorge Vargas and get an actor. append Texas to the end and find this. Turns out he actually lived in Texas City, and the town name he gave me, Bird, was the street. Link to ABC local news article. By all means. I'll let you in on another detail that I felt compelled to leave out last night, as I was already giving myself the fricking shakes retelling that story. I usually have a pretty active imagination, and if it was any other call I would have attributed it to said imagination, but I could swear I heard other voices in the static. I tell myself it was either the TVs we have set up, or the one in the break room, but the TVs in the call area are usually muted for obvious reasons and the break room TV is never on. Coworker agreed to close up the building and let me go home after the call, so I kinda buggered out of there quick.
Here's a story that happened a year ago. Just before, a little context. Hear weird noises in my house since I was a kid. During my childhood, was woken up almost every night by the noises. Told my parents about it, that I was shitless scared, but they always told me that they didn't hear shit. Noises became less frequent when I grew up, and almost disappeared when I was a teen. Had an ex that was into paranormal shit and she also heard those noises, even saw a human-shaped shadow in my bedroom. Meet a girl in uni, talks quickly about paranormal. Hey, my dad is a Reiki master and he can sense ghosts, do you want his number? Thought it was bullshit, but sure, why not? 2 weeks passes, don't call him, have peaceful nights. Now the good part. Sunday night, go to sleep. Start to hear the usual noises, wood crackling, someone hitting a wall, someone hitting my desk, my screens. Suddenly I hear something dragging their feet next to me. First thought it was my parents that were going to bed, but there was no light in the corridor. Get really scared and don't move an inch. Hear a really loud thud in my garage, then like if someone was dragging a concrete block on the floor. I have some concrete blocks in my garage. All the usual noises intensifies, hear the crackling and hitting noises really hard. Fucking scared out of my mind, get up and go in my living room. Both of my parents are on the couch, chilling. Ask if they didn't hear what happened in the garage. No, Anon, what do you mean? There is someone down there, I'm sure of it. Mom goes in the garage, nothing moved, nothing is out of the ordinary. Try to go to bed and sleep. Next day. Call instantly the Reiki master. Have a really long call explaining everything that happened. Tells me that my village suffered from World War II, that the vacant house next to me is filled with ghosts. Doesn't believe it at first, but I'm shocked he knows all this. This is genuine and my village is fairly unknown. The house next to me was used in World War II to build weapons and is fairly destroyed. Nobody lives in it and the hotel in my village uses it as a garbage bin. Proceed to tell me that the noises that I hear are ghosts coming in my home and back into this World War II house. Proceed to tell me that it's normal that I hear a lot of noises at my desk because there is a chimney. A chimney, according to him, is something that ghosts can use to get out of the physical realm, and that it's very heavy in the physical realm. Explains to me that's why I feel weird in my room and I feel heavy in my house. Tells me that a lot of ghosts goes through this chimney to get out of this realm. Ask me to take pictures of my room. Tell me to put white candles and GTFO for at least 1 hour. Tell me to call him after 1 hour. I wait in my living room, kinda anxious. Call him 1 hour later. Yeah, it's done, you can go in your room. You won't feel any change right now, but I think you'll have a good night. Maybe you'll feel something in like 3 days. Have the first night of my life in my home where I hear literally zero noise or sound. Wake up happy that the night was so sweet, feel a little bit lighter. Feel something grabbing my ankles as I get out of my room. Freak out a bit, but thinks that my mind playing tricks. Call the Reiki master in the evening, tell him that I feel lighter and shit. Tell me that what I felt grabbing my ankles is my dead brother. At this point I'm fucking flabbergasted since I never talked about my twin brother, who died at birth. Tells me that he suffers in this physical realm, that he needs to go out in the spiritual world but that he can't since my mother and I are keeping him down here because we think about him a lot. Tell me to put candles in my room, and talk like if I was talking to my brother, to tell everything I think about him, and that he has to go. Do it, feel kinda lightheaded and almost fall 10 minutes into the talking. Suddenly feel okay and ever lighter than before. Calls me back. Explains that he was channeling a beam, my brother came and they talked, that he was really scared but after some convincing he went through the beam and went into the spiritual realm. Feel relieved and weirdly happy. Don't hear any noise, never feel randomly heavy since then. This man changed my life and I have a few stories with him. I was really skeptic of his bullshit at the beginning but the results got me hooked into the paranormal world. Since he's a Reiki master he can teach it to others and I wanted to become one of his students. A year after I became an initiate and I still talk to him now. Can share all the weird shit that happened to me with him too if you want. Okay, I'm gonna talk about the first time I came at his home and my initiation. Drives for 1 hour and arrives at a small village in the mountains, pretty good view. Ring and I can finally put a face on the voice in the phone. Pretty chill dude, white hair, seems quite old but he's 35. Works in construction site, really humble and quite a low-class worker. Enters in a house that is full of clutter, a lot of little trinkets related to paranormal. Home feels really light and peaceful, I'm not even stressed and it's weird for me because I'm a really anxious person. Was in my old metal clothes back then, wore a pentagram necklace that I bought with my ex, and 2 rings, one was a huge eye, that I bought to make my ex happy. Talk and chill in the living room, suddenly feel kinda hot and shaky. Doesn't think much about it since it happens often, anxiety. My rings start to burn me and I feel really weird. Remove them and remove my necklace too. Asks F, Reiki master, about what the fuck just happened. Shake even more during my question, then suddenly it stops. Looks at me with a serious face, but not concerned or scared. I don't know if I can tell you this. It's not really serious or what but we're gonna have to do something. No worries F you can tell me what's happening, I feel safe here. You're possessed and if you feel shaky and hot it's the spirit that is reacting to the brightness here. I don't really know if that's the good word since I'm not English. But he told me that some spirits are dark and since he works in the Reiki and do rituals in his house and himself is white and bright and that the dark spirits doesn't feel good in this kind of atmosphere. Proceed to go in his room where he does rituals. Makes me sit in a chair, ask me randoms questions about my life. Tells me to close my eyes. Feels him going behind me, feels his hands hovering over my shoulders. Tells me to open my eyes and watch his hand. One hand at my right is 2 to 3 centimeters away from me, 1 inch. And the one at my left is 4 to 5 centimeters, 2.5 inch. Tells me that my aura is not in balance and that he'll balance it. Close my eyes, hear him doing weird shit with his breathing. Tell me to open my eyes, get up and walk. Just for a little context, I was born at 6 months and I have some damage from it. I have a spasticity and I have trouble walking on my right heel. It got better after my surgery but I sometimes walk on my toes, and I don't have much muscle in this leg, I always walk with more weight on my left leg. Proceed to walk like I never had a problem in my life, is absolutely shocked that I walk with the same balance on my legs. Burst in joy, tells me that it's not over. Makes me sit on his massage table that is next to his bookcase. Before I sit, he pushes it a few inches away the bookcase and get behind me. Tells me to put my hands like I was T-posing, raise my arms up and down and describe what I feel. Arms feel heavy and it hurts, as usual, it's pretty normal. Tell me to close my eyes. Feel the same shit as before, hands hovering and weird breathing. Suddenly I hear him take a big step back like he dodged something. Tell me to open my eyes and do the same thing as before. My arms feel super light and I legit raise them up and down for 5 minutes, not getting hurt or tired in the slightest. End of the session for the day, he didn't do shit about my possession. Getting kinda tired now and I don't know if someone stills read this. Anybody wanna read how my exorcism went and how my initiation went? Yes, you make me want to visit a Reiki person, though I'm worried there are plenty of frauds/hacks I wouldn't be able to spot. Well, if you wanna see if they're frauds or not, ask them to see their certificate. Pick related. There is 4 certificates. 1 for each degrees. The first one to the third is for students, and is about your health. The last one, 4th, is the master degree and allows you to teach and actually use it to heal other. You can also heal others with your first degree but it's not really recommended. The thing that makes the certificate valid is the huge yellow thing in the bottom right. IRL it's shiny and it is only given by a Reiki foundation. I'm gonna write my exorcism and shit now. How my exorcism went with F. Proceed to go in his room. Asks me a lot of question about my ex, my psychological state. My ex was really toxic and meddled with black magic, Ouija, and pendulums. She made me try some pendulums and I've done some weird shit with it because of her. Suddenly feels really bad and feel a pressure on my right shoulder. Tells me that it's because the spirit of my ex is in the room and watching us talk. She's asking F to put an end to our bond, because I was really attached to her even if she raped and cheated on me. Felt tears coming up but didn't cry. Made me lay down on his massage table and warned me that he's gonna read a passage from his book, it's gonna be at least 15 mn long, that I just gotta close my eyes and focus on his sayings, no matter what happens. Starts reading his exorcism thingy thing and I feel normal. After a while I start getting pretty hot and I feel my legs kinda shaking a bit. Suddenly my hands closes and they form a fist. Kinda feel anger coming up, start to feel annoyed and angry. Legs shaking more and more, the shaking is starting to go in my hands and my arms too. I'm not having a seizure but it's like when you are stretching out too strong. After a while, feel tears coming up, wanna cry real hard but keeps the feelings in. F is still reading his exorcism book. He is saying the last lines, amen and shit. Suddenly everything stops. Feel really heavy and hot, but no more shaking. He comes toward me, tell me to open my eyes and chill. I explain a bit what happened, I try to get up. Doesn't manage to, I feel nailed into the table. Tells me to not worry, it's because my body is tired. 5 mn after I'm able to get up, I get off the table. We talk a bit and I'm really thirsty so we go down. Have a lot of trouble going down the stairs, drink a lot. Feels weird, but kinda better than before. Weeks comes by, feel less and less attached to my ex and today I feel nothing towards her anymore. F explained to me later that the thing that I had in me was a low spirit that latched onto me when I used my pendulum. It wasn't a danger because it had a really low status. Now, let's talk about my initiations. I waited a long time for it. He made me wait more than a year because he needed another student and also because it was his first initiation. Initiations never do in pairs, it's at least with 3 people. Come at his house, meet a 25-ish Y/O girl. F tells me that she already got her first degree but she didn't do anything with it and wanted to have a refresher. We go up in his room, talks a lot about Reiki and start doing the Reiki circle. We put our hands palms side up and we put them close to each other hands. F starts doing some weird shit with his breathing, seems focused. Suddenly feel a wind coming from my right, only feeling it in my palms. Winds is kinda warm, suddenly changes directions and goes to the left. Wind stop and I feel something in my hands, there's nothing. Goes cold, then hot again. Tells us to put our hand down. 0, the girl, and me are kinda shocked, we felt the same thing and it was weird. F kept talking about Reiki, teached us some shit. Made us learn auto treatments and how to do a treatments for the other. O gave me a treatment and I gave one to her. For a treatment, O have to lay down, keep her eyes closed and I gotta put my hands over her at key points during 2 to 3 minutes. I gotta focus, close my eyes and just basically wait on the key point then go on another. I can put my hands or her body or make them hover her, that depends on her, not on me. O tells me that I can touch her, it's okay. Put my hands at key points, follow the instructions of F. Don't know what I'm doing but it's weird touching the body of a girl who's 7 years older than me and that I just met. At some point I feel my hand getting real hot, think nothing of it. 40 minutes later it's over, she opens her eyes. Tells me that she is shocked, that it felt like I did that all my life and that I was really good at it. She felt that my hands were burning hot and that it felt really good, her neck hurted but it stopped. Tells me that I'm basically gifted. The day keeps going, learning shit. At the end of the day, the last thing to do is that we have to get our canal opened. F takes O in a private room, I'm alone and I wait. O comes back, it's my turn. F makes me sit on a chair, comes behind me. Close my eyes, I sense he's doing really huge movements behind me, really focused. Feels he's breathing on me, kinda feels weird. After a while tells me that it's over. I open my eyes. He's in front of me, looking really proud and happy. I get up and I thank him a lot about this day and his teaching, that everything that he done to me was really good. We hug. I feel like a son to me and I felt some genuine fatherly love. Feel loved and appreciated. Almost cried, not gonna lie. F had a tear in his eye too. F tells me that my canal is now opened, that I have a constant flux of Reiki coming in and out of me, and even if I never use Reiki again, this canal will always be opened and I can use it to ask things to the universe. Tells me that since the canal gives me a Reiki flux, I'm constantly connected with the universe and the Reiki energy. I can ask questions to the universe when I want, how I want, and that I'll maybe get answers or maybe they'll make shit happen. Get back home, feels really good, and I noticed that I walked normally for at least 3 days straight. I was curious about this whole questioning the universe thingy and I asked some things to it. I tried to make it give me a GF, never happened yet. But I've tried to make it do more simple things and it happened in the few days after my questions. For example, a few months ago I was in a bad shape and I badly needed advices from F. I'm used to sending him a message in times of needs, but this time I didn't want to bother him. But one night I felt really bad and I asked to the universe that F calls me to help me because I felt like shit and I needed him. A few days later, he called me randomly and he never, ever does that. He only calls me when I ask him through message. I asked a few others things to the universe and I felt like it worked most of the time. Example, I'm really anxious and the day before something big for me, I ask the universe to help me for the coming day, to make me less anxious and more in control, and usually the days goes fine and I'm feeling quite happy. I've tried to go through some big events without asking and I always felt really anxious. With asking it always went like a charm.
First time posting on, I posted this on /b/ and told I should post here it goes, it might interest you. Be me, 35 years old farmer. Live in alone, farm from everything. Was married with 2 kids before wife's death 3 years ago and kids' disappearance a year ago. Night before disappearance all was normal. Notified police, they said they will try their best. They said maybe kids just got lost. Kids never got lost. Didn't anyone except police. Be alone and depression kicks in. Fast forward last October. Laying in bed in front of fireplace. Too cold. Smoking my pipe and fighting sleep. Eventually slept and woke up feeling disturbed to total darkness. Weird cause fire stays till I put it out in the morning. Nothing can cause its extinguishment. Stand to light fire again, too cold to sleep without. Step on liquid near the fireplace. Light fire again. Look down. I'm on a large bloody stain. No other traces of blood anywhere. Panic and gaze at the roof. Nothing is leaking. Take my rifle and head towards the door. Look outside, nothing alarming. Moon lights the whole area. Strong wind. I see a little light in the distance. A large blurry red dot. WTF is that? See more clearly. There is a silhouette, a tall silhouette with the dot at its feet. Load the rifle and aim at it. Took aim. Target way too far. Scared shitless. Silhouette just standing still. At the point of not knowing what to do. Shit, greatest regrets for not fixing the truck, had 3 days to do so. Only one option left. Called my stock supplier, who is a good friend and knew my father well. Asked to pick me up. Needless to say, calling him at 2 a.m. made him realize something was clearly wrong. Asked me what was wrong. No time to explain, please just come fast. Hardly breathing and shivering uncontrollably. Lock the door firmly. The red stain still by the fire. Grab pipe and smoke to calm the nerves. Waiting seems eternal. I hear the wind outside and the cracking of the trees, adds fear but nothing abnormal. Have the door to open door and peek outside another time. Silhouette was still there but it seemed taller and closer, the red dot was also brighter. Fuck, rush back inside. Thinking about getting the dogs from the barn where I usually lock them, Nope, too scared for that. Smoking more nervously. Intense impatience. Phone rings. It's the supplier. He'll be a bit late, Baron Road, his voice is weak. Alright, I hung up and kept waiting. Put on soft music to keep myself distracted. Roars outside, some kind of beastly roars I never heard before. WTF is happening, definitely not the wind. Panicked and stayed still. Dogs started barking furiously at that same moment. Had 7 dogs. Also mules started neighing. Cold is deeper. So frustrated, didn't want to stay alone and didn't want to leave fire warmth. Aw fuck it, took a light torch and ran out from the back door straight to the bar. Get in and lock the gates. Thank God nothing abnormal inside. Feel much better with the animals' company. Dogs still barking. Start petting them to calm them down. Realize left phone inside. Shit, too scared to go back and get it. Moment later, one of my dogs stood up and started staring blankly at a comber. Dog is trembling and moaning, most terrified face ever for a dog. WTF is happening, is this normal? Dogs start barking again, hear a truck engine. Biggest relief in my life. Engine stops and I go out. Locked the doors on the animals and ran to the truck. Sat next to the friend. Friend is a strong Russian bloke, saw him carry logs, a normal human wouldn't even move. Usually no emotions and no expressions on his face. See clearly now his terrified face. What's wrong? No answer, he just started the truck and we left. Awkward silence, he was hardly focusing on the driving, his mind was absent. Ignoring everything I say. Fine, stay quiet. After a while he took a tur. Wait, we were heading back to the farm. What's going on? I start shouting and taunting him to say anything. Close to the farm now. He stops and looks at me on the verge to cry. Get out. He's trembling and pointing a gun at me. Walk out confused and with absolute fear. See his truck fading away in the distance. Fuck, I'm doomed. Quickly head back to get rifle back from the BAM. Doors unlocked, made sure to lock them before leaving. Rifle is still there, but not a single trace of any of my animals. Get back in the house running. Fire extinguished again. Light it on again. The red stain just doubled in size. Fear seizing my body. Hear a bark followed by a strong scream. Goosebumps and hardly breathing. Go to windows to check the silhouette spot. Still there in same position I left it. Dots were glowing like crimson fire. Take phone and call friend to try and understand. His phone is off. Call police. All is off. Weird, I still got transmission. Heart racing. Decided only one way left out of this. Walk out. Head with rifle loaded towards the silhouette. Adrenaline rush. Walking faster and faster. Silhouette and dots start facing. What is happening? House if far behind me now. Look back. Barn is on fire. Should I walk back or just leave? No close village, no nothing. Run back, the BAM is lost, no way to put out the fire. House door locked. Try hard forcing it. Useless. Go to back door, locked too. Gave it several kicks, finally broke. Got in all black again, total darkness. First step in, I feel stepping on liquid. Light the torch. OMG, blood is everywhere now. Ran as fast as I could, heading towards the east. The main road is there. What a day. Never ever considered anything supernatural before. 30 minutes of running and finally at main road. Road is empty, normal since it's 4 a.m. Waited a long time but a bit more relieved away from that place. Nothing made sense in my mind. Small car passing by. Didn't stop. Just realized who is insane to pick up a stranger here in the middle of the night. Trying too hard not to think about everything that happened. Too tired from all the running, so laid down. Fell asleep. Awakened by morning light. Light is recomforting. Decide to head back now that light makes vision clearer. Do not care anymore, I need to see. Back to the farm. Door is not locked. Walk in. Not even a single drop of blood. Fire was on. Confused more than ever, it wasn't when I let running. Too much fear to feel anymore. Bam was to ashes and no animals. Sat in the corner and smoked my pipe. Think I was high last night and the barn just caught on fire. Call friend to check. OMG, phone is ringing. He answers. OMG, thank God you answered. About to tell him about last night. He screams and tells me not to ever call him back. WTF, so my conclusions were wrong, I was not high. Just decided to stay there for this day. Lost in thinking. There is an uncle who we did not talk, he had big quarrel with my father in the past. Thought I should call him last hope. My life in the farm ends anyways, lost my animals and my supplier, and it's hard to find one. Call uncle at midday. No answer. Fast forward 5 p.m. Shit, night is close. Call uncle again. Talk awkwardly. Finally tell him I need to leave and I need him to pick me. He lives about 3 hours away. Found it awkward and started asking questions. Told him I just feel uncomfortable there. Also told him about wife's death and kids' disappearances. He seemed worried and said he will pick me up the next day. Finally a way out, but still the night is here. Decided it's best I stay awake with rifle in hand to observe everything. Be at farm in the morning. Walkin'. The floor was scratched. Shit happened in here. Went to my room to take some of my shit. Be in front of bed. See a picture. Weird picture, never saw it ever before. Hold it and see, about to faint. It was my father with my Russian supplier in the back of the picture, and in the front my mother. They all look so dim and so sad. I look further in the picture. Behind in a corner, my dead wife was sitting in the corner holding my older kid. This was the room I was in. I hated everything about what's going, fear rising. I tear the picture and walk out. Decided to bum the farm and everything about it. Leave with the farm in flames behind me. Never ever returning to this land. The picture still on my mind, distracting me. My wife and my parents never met. Went back to uncle's home. Big crowd in front of it. Burned to ashes. Thinking about uncle's last words. I still don't get it. Uncle died in the fire. Went to Lithuania with the money I had left, and that's where I live now. I've got a story if anyone is interested. I recently typed it out. Happened to me and a friend a few years back. It's pretty long, 5 parts, but I'll start dumping it now. Be me and my friend, 15. Chilling out on his property one fine day, ways away from anyone or anything. 6,000 acres to fuck around on, anything is possible. It's around 1 in the afternoon, decide to go for a drive down to his cattle paddock, pass through gate to a massive flat paddock surrounded by trees, goes on forever. Tells me there's a too spooky old house sitting on his property down a trail we're checking out. Let's roll. Jiff. Cruising down trail in Ute, house appears in the distance. Friend idles up to it slowly as he gives me the rundown on this place. Tells me they were renting it out to some old bloke, weird guy, who died in there a few years ago. Broad daylight, so adventure mode kicks in. Get out of Ute and approach the stump. It's falling to fucking pieces, gives off the worst vibe, air literally feels cooler in its presence. Remove front door that is half off the hinges, light piercing through cracks in the roof and boards in the windows. Dank and dusty as fuck in here, messing with my lungs. Tell mate to go on ahead, go back to Ute to grab my bottle of water. Sitting in Ute with door open, drinking my water, observing creepy ass shack. All of a sudden mate comes flying out the front door, the expression on his face made me feel physically ill. Never seen a human being look so fucked up and disturbed, he was pale as all shit and had a soul-crushing look on his face. Jumps straight into the ute and fires it up and we begin reversing dramatically. Ask him, WTF Anon, what's wrong you good man? Stop. We're good. Doesn't respond, just keeps reversing until we spin around and take off back up the trail. Sitting in silence, shit got real. We're absolutely hammering it up this trail, took us half the time to get back to the paddock as it did getting down to that house. We come to a sudden stop as my mate pierces us through the tree line back onto the open paddock from which we came. Ute slides to a stop as we're side on looking down back down the trail. The silence is intense, my mind is racing wondering what is happening. Look over to my friend, still looks shocked as all fuck. Slowly turns to me, lifeless expression. I ask, dude. You're actually scaring me, what the fuck happened? Says after I went back to the ute he made his way into the lounge room and started examining all the shit in there as it was scattered all over the joint. Said he approached the old couch in the middle of the room facing an old broken TV set. Takes a break for a few seconds, he still wasn't all there in the head. I started looking down the trail as my heart sank, I just knew he was going to say something fucked up. He went on to say there was an old mirror laying in front of the couch and he went over to pick it up because it looked insanely clean to be in that old dump. Reckons when he picked it up and looked into it after a few seconds he noticed the old man over in the corner, jerking about and his face distorting in ways no one could imagine. Horrible shit he says. Says all of a sudden he came flying at him, mate still watching it happen in the mirror all over a few seconds. Says he threw the mirror down and piss bolted out of there, hearing a disgusting cry as he went flying back out the front to me. I heard nothing, that's the fucked up part. I'm sitting there stunned from hearing that shit, trying not to make eye contact with the trail. Freaking the fuck out at this point, we're sitting in silence for a few moments. Friend fucking pukes out the window of the ute out of nowhere. Tell him to get in the fucking passenger seat, I'm getting us back home. As I'm about to start the ute to take off, my friend yells wait. Fucking scared me half to death. I reply what? What is it? He's just staring back down the trail. At that point I had goosebumps and was feeling very overwhelmed. Dead quiet too, not one sound. All of a sudden he jerks his head back around to me and yells drive. Drive. Flip my shit and punch it. Dangerously hooning through this paddock back towards the gate. As I'm driving yell what the fuck? To him. He's literally crying, saying he can smell rotting meat / flesh, pukes out the window again. I smell nothing, air is fresh as a daisy. Freaking the fuck out, get to gate, scream at him to jump out and open it, he just sits there. Anon open the fucking gate. Just looks at me blankly. Adrenaline kicks in and I jump out, open it, jump back into the ute and take off up towards the house, leaving the gate wide open. Fuck it. Get back inside his yard, stop ute, and sit there in silence for about a minute. I wait for him to say something but he doesn't. So I say, dude, stop fucking around, are you alright? What the fuck is going on, man? He starts to look a bit better, just looking at me in shock but his color is back in his face. Says when we were sitting at the trail an overwhelming stench of death wafted over him, said it was unbearable. Told him I didn't smell a thing, I'm confused and panicked as shit. We park the ute and walk down to the fence around his yard and stare down towards the paddock. Tells me he's fucking petrified and he wants to come stay with me for a few days. We were out there alone and his parents wouldn't be back for a few more days. Tell him I definitely agree and I didn't want to stay there overnight anyway, I lived back in town. Go inside his house and ring my mom, she arrives 2 hours later to pick us up. Longest wait of our lives. When she arrives we just act normal, get in the car and go. Talking about it when we get back to my place in town. We're calm now so we can discuss it better and try and figure out WTF happened at that place. Have a good chat about it and then drop it for a while to do normal shit. Fast forward 2 days, friend has been staying with me. Get a call from his parents, they're home. Tells us he needs to come home ASAP, he's in trouble. Why? That gate I left open, it had been ripped off its post and was in the middle of my friend's fucking yard, I shit you not. I go silent and just pass him the phone, thinking to myself. Sadly. I'm so glad I'm not you right now, brother. So glad. Watching him on the phone as his face returns to the color it was when I first saw him run out of that shack. Head falls in my hands, this is not happening, how the fuck could it be? He hangs the phone up, says he's got to go home, tell him I understand. His parents come to pick him up and he leaves. I sit in my room eagerly awaiting him to sign onto Skype. When he finally does, he says the gate was scratched to shit, it's made of heavy wood, and was laying where I had initially parked the ute after our mad dash back to the yard. Silence. Just no words for this situation. Tell him it'll be alright, could have been some hick that occasionally comes to pinch his star pickets. He agrees, and sounds like he's trying to convince himself. End call. Fast forward again, about 2 to 3 days. After all that I was just glad to be home, and I didn't communicate with my friend too much in those days because he freaked me out pretty bad. Phone rings, I answer, it's him. Tells me instantly that the half-hinged door we ripped off to enter that place is back on the hinge. I don't want to hear this shit. Anon, please. Keep saying, dude, it's back on the fucking hinge, over and over. Ask him how he even knows this. Did his stupid ass go back there? Tells me he went for a cruise down to the paddock with his dad to feed cattle, and his dad went to collect something from the shack that had been there for ages. Says he was fucking terrified but didn't tell his dad anything and just went along with it, since he was with his dad etc. Said he nearly passed out when they pulled up to the house and the door was back on the hinge, half off just as it previously was. Said he panicked and stayed in the car. His dad got out and went around the back of the house to collect an old step ladder, and was only gone a few minutes. Told me he freaked out when his dad walked out the front door of the shack, nearly gave him a heart attack. His dad put the shit in the tray of the ute and got back in. Before he could start it up and drive off, my friend said he asked him why he came out the front of the house. He would have used the old back door. Said he needed to check on something in the shack that he was concerned about. Friend musters up the courage to ask him what. Said his dad said the old man was a good friend of his that went a bit strange though in his older years. Said after his wife died he went batshit crazy and died of a stroke or some shit. Said he wanted to check if his wife's mirror was still in the lounge room where he last saw it. Said it was dear to the old man, only thing he had left of his wife. Friend starts crying to me over the phone. Says his dad said it was still there, right where it's always been, sitting in front of the lounge chair where the old man died with it in between his feet. Silence. Friend is crying and I'm just sitting in shock as my spine begins to tingle. MFW, that mirror broke when my friend threw it down at the ground before he ran.
I don't have much time to write this, and I know you believe me, but he's after me and soon he'll be after you too. Just do me favors, don't read this story. He comes after anyone who reads his story. Forgive me, but I have no choice but to post this story so the truth will be known. In the deepest dark depths of Siberia, and in the deepest most isolated of Siberia, there has been murders and disappearances taking place. Nobody talks about the one responsible except in harsh whispers. Russian government refuses to answer question about killer or his victims and will say that it is just urban myth. This is not so because truth is that killer will murder anyone who knows his story and his name. This is the legend of death, the killer. In times of Comrade Stalin, it was said that he sought ape-human hybrids or apes that could be trained to live like men. On this project, Stalin had no luck and was frustrated with this failure. This was until the 1950s, at the last years of Stalin's reign, where in the deepest depths of Siberia, a feral child was found. The child had been eating wild animals and fighting wild beasts. Even when he was found, the child had blood running from his lips. Even the Soviet scientists could not tell if this is man or beast. Stalin himself was called to view this child, and even his mighty steel heart ran cold looking at this bestial child. However, Stalin remained strong and said that the child should be raised as a true Soviet citizen. Thus it was done, and the child was brought up with the top level of Soviet education. Thus his bestial nature lay buried, and its place was a true belief in communism and the Soviet Union. He was named Dmitry Artemy Ignatiev, and Dmitry A. Ignatiev was given to a good Soviet family. Dmitry A. Ignatiev worked hard in school, and after every school day he would do extra work for the communal farms or the mines of Siberia. He put his heart and soul into building communism. This was his life and soul. As a teenager, he was a top student and hero of his city. There was not a day in his life when he was not working for glory of the motherland and people. He soon went to best university of the Soviet Union, but he still loved his hometown the best. When he graduated, he got a job in the KGB and was known to a ruthless hunter of the enemies of the people. There was not a single traitor or dissident whose blood did not run cold at the mere mention of the name Dmitry A. Ignatiev. He could wrestle bears for sport. He could break a man's soul just with his cold stare. Though Dmitry A. Ignatiev was a hardline communist atheist who did not believe in soul, he could recite communist works off by heart, and he always drank his vodka straight in large glasses. Even when the Soviet Union had condemned comrade Stalin, Dmitry A. Ignatiev still kept his holy name alive in his heart and would live his life by Stalin's wise words. He could have lived in Moscow or Leningrad, but Dmitry A. Ignatiev chose to live in the deepest depths of Siberia because he thinks that those cities make you weak and soft. He is true Soviet man and true Siberian man. In the 70s, he married a true daughter of the Soviet Union, her name Irina Dunyasha Naumov, and she is fellow KGB agent, and the only woman he felt worthy of him. She also known for hunting down dissidents, and their relationship started as rivalry to see who could hunt down the most. He had family with her and taught them to be the model Soviet citizens and to love Lenin and Stalin. Though they still had time to work and did not take many days off, their children understood because they knew that their parents were working hard every day to build communism. He made sure that his children were given the best education and went to the best schools. This brought strong results, and his offspring won many trophies and awards. This was the 80s, and Dmitry A. Ignatiev and Irina D. Naumov could not be more pleased with their accomplishments in working for communism and their service to the motherland. But little did they realize that it would soon all end. Dmitry A. Ignatiev felt his blood boil at the sight of the fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of great socialist nations like the GDR, Romania, and Poland. He was sickened with rage at the execution of Ceausescu and disgust at the protests in China. Then the hardest blow of them all was struck when his beloved Soviet Union, and that all he had worked for, was thrown into ruins. He almost became that feral beast he as a child as he watched the dream of communism end. That beast almost overtook him again when Albania fell and the DPRK's Kim Il-sung died. He had hoped that Albania at least would stand strong, as they had been the last to keep Stalin's sacred name alive, so it was their destruction that hit him very hard. The death of Kim Il-sung has also caused him great bitter sorrow, as he now worried for his Korean comrades, and he had also met Kim Il-sung a few times and admired him as true communist carrying forward the cause of Lenin and Stalin. He still had his wife and children to love and to support. He would make sure that they kept alive the spirit of Stalin's cause and communism. Thus he would keep that feral beast inside of him under control. This did not last for long though, and soon a new tragedy would strike this honorable Soviet man. As a KGB agent, he had made many enemies and arrested many criminals and dissidents. These people now wanted their revenge, and now there is no Soviet state system to stop them. They can take it. The Soviet official of his area, who had been part of introducing the traitorous revisionist perestroika policy, was now a rich capitalist fat cat and member of the Russian mafia. He was indulging in all kinds of debaucheries, drink, drugs, and women, and he traded this to poison the people with his sin. While many died from poverty that he caused and the drugs and drink he sold them, he took their wives and daughters as prostitutes and lived like a decadent capitalist pig. He also contacted many of the men of the region who had been sent to gulags or denounced because of Dmitry Ignatiev. This fat cat traitor would have himself been arrested if it were not for the fall of the Soviet Union, because Dmitry Ignatiev was investigating his treachery, so he had cause to take revenge on Dmitry Ignatiev. So he made these traitors and criminals part of his branch of the Russian mafia and made them vow to take revenge on Dmitry Ignatiev. That night he organized his men around Dmitry Ignatiev's dacha with torches to burn him out. Most dachas were made of wood, but Dmitry Ignatiev head is made of pure Soviet steel and concrete so that it would embody the spirit of Stalin himself. The mafia members were scared at first at this great dacha and trembled at its mighty structure. Yet the still persisted Dmitry Ignatiev himself was not at home that night, as he was out fighting bears to unleash his anger at the destruction of the dream he loved so dear. Irina D. Naumov and their children were there though, and they fought long and hard. Irina D. Naumov used all her KGB training to take down countless mafia thugs. She snapped their necks and put bullets in their heads. She burned some alive and gunned down others. Their children sniped others with their hunting rifles that had been bought for their birthdays and killed more with Molotov cocktails named after that great Soviet hero. The mafia members were terrified of Irina and even of the children. They also knew that if this what his wife and children could do to them, what could Dmitry Ignatiev himself do? They were quaking in their boots, terrified, but the gangster ex-official drove them on, and they used cowardly capitalist tactics and set the building alight with petrol bomb and napalm. They left before Dmitry Ignatiev could arrive and find his wife and children burned to ashes and his home now a concrete skeleton. When Dmitry Ignatiev saw this sight, he lost all semblance of humanity and became a beast once more. His mind and sanity left him, and he just snapped and became an unfeeling monster with one purpose: revenge. Dmitry Ignatiev went on brutal bloody rampage, cutting down anything in his path. The mafia goons did not even know what hit them. Dmitry Ignatiev tore open their throats and gutted them alive. He burned down mafia dens and killed dozens of mafia men, not stopping till he got his revenge. The corrupt pig heard about this slaughter and sent his best men after Dmitry Ignatiev. They came to him in the middle of Siberian tundra, and there an epic confrontation took place as the mafia men cornered Dmitry Ignatiev, but he fought like a wild bear against a pack of wolves. He threw one mafioso against a tree and broke his neck, and another he stabbed in the chest and pulled out his heart. He set 2 mafia men on fire, and the other he sent to an icy grave in the Siberian waters. There was another that hit with a flare gun, and 2 more he blew up with dynamite. Though he was eventually taken down, and the mafia men, wanting brutal revenge, cut out Dmitry Ignatiev's face with a combat knife, leaving just a skull face poking through the remains of his face. He was then forced to die in agony, and the mafia thought they had won, thought being the word here. That night the pigs celebrated the death of Dmitry Ignatiev and the many Russians that he had made addicted to drugs and drink. He slouched in his chair, his big disgusting pig gut sticking out as he watched a poor daughter lap forced into prostitution dance for him, not caring about her tears. In fact, they made him laugh. But little did he know this would be last night of his miserable life, because Dmitry Ignatiev's spirit still lived and is out for revenge. That night, disgusting pig counted his money, a ghostly hand gripped his throat, and he saw that skull face, and he screamed, but a hand gripping his face stifled his screams. The skull-faced man, who was Dmitry Ignatiev and is now death, the killer said in a gentle voice like a madman's lullaby, spoke Inoinoki, and he cut the face of that mafia pig to look just like his own as the bastard screamed in pain and horror. When the mafia thugs came in, they saw a horrifying sight. Their boss was dead, his face cut just like Dmitry Ignatiev's face was. The next night, they were found dead in the exact same way. There we have it. I have told you his story, but beware, he will be coming for you next, just like he is coming for me. There's no way to stop him, and kills anyone he hears his story and cuts their face just like his. The only hope you have of surviving is if you are a true follower of Stalin's ideas or the ideas that continued his work, whether that Maoism, Juche, or Hoxhaism. If you are, then he might spare you. Might. It depends on how true you are. I hope that I have written his life and story in a respectful enough way to both him and communism that he might spare me. Oh God, I just heard enter my house. He's coming in my room. Oh God, he's right behind me. I can feel him breathing down my neck, and oh, that knife, that face. Bah, along with some gibberish. Privet comrades, this is Death, the killer here, and I want you to know that I have killed the author of this post. He now has a face just like mine. I would also like to inform you that I will be coming for you next, and there is nothing you can do. So sleep tight and don't let the bedbugs bite, for I will be doing the biting this night. Spoke on Noki comrades, and look forward to my blade. Do svidania.
Hello all. Well, I've had a fair amount of real paranormal experiences in my lifetime, and I'd figure I'd post a few here. Everything from growing up in a haunted house to visiting the most haunted spot on earth, Pobglaya. For my first story, I will share my experience on the island of Pobglaya along with my own personal pictures. This place had a weird impact on me, and hence I adopted the name as my own online persona. Hopefully you all enjoy, and maybe it will even inspire someone to create an effect off my story. The history. Pobglaya is one of the most haunted places in the world. And for good reason. This small island in the lagoons of Venice once had its own government until it was destroyed by war. It's now part of the sightseeing tour, but you won't be setting foot on it. Visitors are not permitted. An aerial photograph of the accursed island. When the bubonic plague swept across Europe, the number of dead and dying in the streets became unbearable. In Venice, the solution came in the form of Pobglaya. Bodies were hauled to the island and dumped into large body pits, some were burned. But it became worse. The living victims were taken to the island and disposed into pits of rotting corpses, left to die, or burned, as they painfully died of the Black Plague. It is said that part of the island's core consists of a layer of human remains, and that often fishermen avoid the area because they may pull up body parts. The war and the plague would seem sufficient cause for ghosts to inhabit this horrible island, and they reportedly did, but a new population was soon to be added. A hospital was built on the island and still stands today, although it is no longer in use. The patients often reported seeing people in their rooms and hearing whispers. One particularly cruel doctor watched his patients succumb to the madness and took an interest in their delusions. He began to experiment with the human mind, physically with his studies of the brain itself, and mentally as he sent the patients to an observation building, where they would be subjected to further torture. The complex also contains a haunted oven room and a morgue. Eventually the doctor began to see the spirits himself and jumped, or was thrown, from the bell tower to his death. Rumor has it he is now bricked up in that same tower. Some say you can still hear the bell ringing late at night. You would think skeptics and believers alike would learn their lesson about Pobglaya. Whether or not it is a place of evil is unknown, but it certainly does have a history of tragedy. And yet, it is to be used again. If you search hard enough, you will find plans for an educational center to be constructed on the island for tourists. They want to bring families to the island built on restless corpses. It's a horror movie waiting to happen. My tale. I have always had an interest in the paranormal and unexplained phenomena. It goes back to my youth, where I had the disturbing experience of being haunted from approximately ages 5 to 16. But that is a different story. I first heard of this accursed island while I was watching television. The island immediately caught my attention as being an interesting story. After that, I didn't research or even think about it much. A few years later I joined the US Army, and my first duty station was to be in Vicenza, Italy. Of course I was excited. Not many people that were my age get to travel to Italy, let alone live there for 3 years. After about a year of living in Italy, I remembered the show I had seen back in the States, and I happened to be living only 20 minutes away from Venice. I gathered a few brave souls from my unit, and told them the tale of the island and a few more ghost stories that had happened to me in my lifetime. I sparked their interest in the mystique of ghostly phenomena and eventually managed to convince them to tag along with me on a weekend trip to Venice. There was 5 of us set to go. My girlfriend at the time Anya, Roger Olvera, Rich Spoor, Klein, and myself. We came equipped with cameras, watches, cell phones, and money. Anya and myself boarded the train, and were on our way to Venice. Olvera and the others would meet up with us in Venice at a later time. When we arrived, Anya gasped at the sheer beauty of the city on water. We walked out of the train station, and wandered a few blocks over to a quaint little hotel. We purchased a room for the weekend and went upstairs to drop off our luggage. Picture, the first building you see when you exit the train station in Venice. It was under construction at the time. We then set out to explore this marvelous city. We hopped on the nearest boat bus. The city's streets are water, so the buses there had small piers all around the city like our bus stops, and rode it to the end of the line. We got off the bus at the end of the line, and walked towards the majestic San Marcos Square. There we gazed up at the beautiful building to see life-size marble statues of horses on an upper balcony. Above the balcony, the statues of countless saints peered over the crowds of people below. We entered the church and saw a breathtaking array of scenes and images from the Bible, adorning the walls in gold. After walking out of the church, my cell phone began to ring. It was Olvera. He and the others had arrived in Venice, so I told them what hotel we were staying at, and agreed to meet them there. After another trip on the bus, Anya and I met up with our friends at the hotel. We stopped at a local trattoria and feasted on a few paninis. After dinner, we hit up a few local clubs and partied the night away. The next morning we all awoke, groggy from the night before, and headed out for a quick breakfast. We then spent the rest of the day sightseeing, until late afternoon. While we were at dinner, I started discussing Pavglaya, and everyone got hyped up about it, and they all wanted to travel out there right away. Being the investigative person I am, I decided to interview a few of the Venice locals and see what they could tell me about the island. I quickly found out that Italians and Americans approach the paranormal in very different manners. If an American neighborhood has a haunted house, every teenager and some adults will head out there at one point or another for a few cheap thrills. Not the Italians. If a place is haunted, they stay away. The Venice government even went so far as to make the island forbidden and no one is allowed out there. The Carabinieri, Italian police, even patrol the island during the day, but the second nightfall hits, they leave. And for good reason. Pavglaya is no haunted house. It is a dark evil place where hundreds of thousands of people were tortured, maimed, and killed in unimaginably horrible ways. After attempting to interview several locals, I found barely anyone who would talk about it. And most simply said stay away. I interviewed our hotel manager at the front desk. "Excuse me?" I said to him. My friends all stood nearby. The manager quickly turned towards us and put on his typical salesman smile. "How can I help you?" he replied in a thick Italian accent. "I was wondering if you could tell us anything about the island of Pavglaya." His expression immediately changed to a scared look. The hotel maintenance man who was working nearby, abruptly looked up and walked away in an almost frightened manner. "There is plenty of nice things to see in Venice," the manager said, trying to compose himself. He nervously pulled out a map of Venice, and started pointing out majestic churches for us to visit. I interrupted him while he was telling me the history of one of the local churches. "We have seen all that already," I replied. "We want to go out to Pavglaya now." "There is nothing out there," he said in a very quick, nervous manner. His smile once again faded and an almost angry look appeared on his face. "I know that," I said, "but you should not ask about these things," he interrupted. He then stormed out of the room in a nervous and upset manner. I looked at my friends, and they all looked shocked as well. That reaction was weird, I thought to myself. We exited the hotel and approached several taxi boat drivers, who refused to take us out there. After about an hour of people refusing to take us there, we had almost given up hope. But I wasn't about to give up. I approached the sleaziest taxi driver I could find and asked him to take us out there. Fortunately, this taxi driver was Russian, and obviously had no knowledge of the local lore and superstitions. He agreed to take us out there and back for €100. We excitedly reached into our pockets, and chipped in for the cost. Spore ran over to a local store, and picked up a bottle of wine for the trip out there. We then excitedly entered the cab, popped open the vino and were off. After about a half an hour in the boat, the sky turned from a midnight blue, to black. Nightfall had come. We were so excited about getting the cab driver to take us, that we had not realized how late it was. Then, I stood up in the boat and pointed in the horizon. There it stood. In the distance, an dark island full of trees could be seen. Poking up above the tree line, we could see the silhouette of the insane asylum's clock tower, where the mad doctor was pushed to his death by unseen hands. The island of Povglaya, as we approached it in the boat. By this time, it was almost completely dark outside. Below, another picture of the island, and the dreaded bell tower. The closer we got, the more our hearts started to pound. As we approached the dreaded island, all of us stood there in silence. The eerie silhouettes of the buildings stood before us in the distance. A chill crept down everyone's spine who stood there looking at this place. The silence was broken by my buddy's voice. "Dude, my cell phone just turned off." And he wasn't lying. As soon as we got closer to the island, all of our cell phones turned off. I am not talking about having no reception, I am honestly saying that everyone's phone was off and would not turn back on. It was like we passed through an invisible energy field because all the phones turned off at the exact same time. By this time we were almost upon the island. As we pulled into a narrow inlet, we noticed a small set of stairs that we could use to dock at and walk up to the island. The boat driver pulled up slowly to the staircase, and shut off the boat's motor. Now, I must say, I have had some very scary experiences in my life and I have been to some very bone-chilling, haunted places, but Povglaya Island definitely had an evil feel to it. Typically when you go to a haunted house, cemetery, etc., you get that feeling that someone or something is watching you and it feels generally uncomfortable. Povglaya had more of a "we need to get the hell out of here right now" feel to it. But since we were so determined to check this place out, we put all those feelings aside, and jumped off the island to explore. By this time our boat driver, who remind you has no knowledge or experience with this place, was freaking out beyond control. He kept yelling, "Hurry! We leave soon." Okay. Towards us. As if being on an incredibly haunted island in the middle of nowhere isn't enough, we had to now also worry about this guy taking off on us suddenly. Remember, none of our cell phones can even turn on at this point. So I suggested to the rest of our party that one or all of us stay close to the boat, in case this guy tries to leave us. The island was very black. The only light source was the full moon above us, and the occasional flash of one of us snapping pictures. 3 of us had cameras and we were snapping away. The island was eerily silent, no birds, no crickets, no animals, nothing. It was almost surreal. The boat driver had a floodlight on the front of his boat that he was frantically shining over all of the buildings. You could tell he was extremely scared. We walked up to the doorway of the main building and took a few pictures. The flash illuminated a huge room that had debris all over the floors. We wandered around the front of the buildings, snapping pictures like tourists, for about 10 minutes. Somebody suggested that we go inside the buildings, but the doors and windows had what looked like a lockdown mechanism on them, so we decided against it. We continued taking pictures of the buildings, and the ominous bell tower. The most terrifying scream I have ever heard in my life pierced through the silence like a knife. All of us stopped dead in our tracks. It took us a second to comprehend what we had just heard. We all looked at each other, stunned. Before we could even talk about what we had just heard, the entire island erupted in screams. Our boat driver was freaking out beyond control. We all frantically jumped on board of the boat. The driver could not get the boat started right away, and we were all freaking out. Finally, the engine started and we quickly pulled away from the island. The screams were still continuing, it sounded like they were all around us. Then, as we were pulling away from the island, the bell started tolling in the distance. This freaked us out even more because the bell is no longer in the tower. It was removed after the island closed down. Once we got away from the island, mysteriously all of our cell phones turned back on. We excitedly talked among ourselves on the boat ride home about what we had experienced. The second we got back to our homes in Vicenza, we rushed to get our photographs developed and to tell everyone our story. We were taking pictures just to show off the island to our friends, but we caught something else in one of the photos. Once I examined the photos, I noticed that we had captured a ghost on camera. Not an orb or a reflecting piece of dust, but the actual silhouette of a man who was not standing there when we took that photo. I took the picture to 3 different professional photographers and they could not explain it. You can see through the guy. See if you can spot it in the second photo of this blog. Anyways, after we left the island, some of the people we went with were still having weird things happen to them while they were at home. Like something had followed us back. Some of them just felt uneasy all the time and some were having insane nightmares and others kept reporting hearing dripping noises in their houses. When they investigated, there were no drips or leaks anywhere. And this happened to more than one person in more than one house on the same night. Overall, I think Podglaya goes beyond the realms of haunted and there is true evil on that island. Too bad we were only there for about 20 minutes. I would definitely love to go back, but a bit more prepared next time. We had no flashlights, equipment, etc. Only cameras with us. It is one of my life goals to get back out there and investigate further. I have a lot more pictures, but I could not find them this evening.
Just a bit of a weird one, Desu. Working a news agent when I was 18. Same people come in every day. Rarely people you don't know. Thing about working in a shop is that you find out everyone's business and what's going on. It's like working in a bar. One day, cute girl in her early 20s comes in who I haven't seen before. Mentions someone has just been murdered, stabbed to death specifically, near the arch. Arch is about 200 yards away from the newsagent. Yeah? No one has mentioned it, and I haven't seen any emergency vehicles pass by which they would have to get to the arch because this is the only road that leads to it. Probably some junkie that doesn't know what she's talking about. About half an hour later, see some emergency vehicles pass by. Maybe she was telling the truth. Took their freaking time getting here though. Older woman comes in and can't wait to tell me the gossip. Says someone has been murdered at the arch and there's blood everywhere. Yeah, I know, they got stabbed. Asks me how I know. Tell her a woman came in about half hour early and told me. She couldn't have. Her neighbor had only just seen the body and rang the police, presumably the first one to find it, and she's been with her since then. I know her neighbor because she comes in the shop. She's an older woman too. Tell her I'm not talking about her, I'm talking about the cute. Following day, police come in and ask me about it. What they really want to know is how I know she was stabbed. Tell them cute told me. Give them description of her. Both look at each other. Ask me to show them on the CCTV. Can't. It's broken. It's just there as a deterrent really. Shows things in real time but doesn't record. Say they might need to come back. Don't. Sit reading the paper. A girl in her 20s was the victim. No picture of her, so can't verify whether it was some kind of ghost telling me or if she was just someone who witnessed it. But she never came back in, and when she came in the first time, she didn't buy anything. Be me, SwissAnon. Driving home from Spain Trough Bordeaux, stay in an Airbnb with garden in a village called Saint Palais sur Mer. Go home after dinner at 11 p.m. Lay in bed. Hear the sounds. Like someone is breathing trough a machine. Deep breath in and out through the mouth. It doesn't stop for 20 to 30 minutes. Get my clothes on. Tell my ex-GFI will go and have a look. Maybe someone is dying. Keg. Go out. Listen to the sound coming from the house next to me. On the other side is a bigger property with a stone wall, little bushes and trees, and a big house 150 foot from the street. Suddenly, the sounds comes from behind the stone wall. Go there. Looking into the property, nothing. Out of nothing, the sounds is right next to me. While turning/spinning around, I take a look at the point where the sound is coming from. Nothing. Run as fast. I never run before or after in my life. It followed me to the fence of the Airbnb property. Look at the gate from the window. Nothing to see, but you clearly hear the breathing. WTF. Stay inside. GF crying. What do? Anon, your head is playing games. Call ambulance. Sound still going for 15 minutes. Ambulance arrive. Suddenly nothing to hear. Go into the large property. It was to be sold. Search the property for 15 minutes. Told them what I heard. They make fun of me in French, thinking I don't understand. He have seen a ghost. Me, chimping out. I didn't drink, smoke, or anything else. Nothing. After 20 minutes they go inside. No joke. 1 minute later, the same freaking sound started again. GF wanted to just GTFO. Closed the window, told her to sleep. What we did. I honestly can't explain it. If it would have been an animal, we would have found it, and the sound wouldn't just have stopped and started again.
Fuck this eclipse shit, I'm tired of it. Let's get a proper /x/thread going. Post creepy, weird, and unexplainable stuff that happened to you or others close to you, but had no reoccurrence and never bothered you again. Can be green text or not. I'll start. Be Eurotrash on work trip to Florida. Stay at resort with co-worker for 3 days. Last night before checkout, getting drunk at bar. Co-worker comes down to the bar, looks pale AF. Says he saw ghost in his room. Clown on him, agree to swap rooms for the lulz. Switch rooms, go to bed and a few hours later wake up to noises in bathroom. Investigate the bathroom, find nothing. Return to the room, see shadow figure sitting by my bedside. Stand there in disbelief. Blink a few times and it vanishes. It all happened so fast, but I know what I saw. I'm fucking terrified. It's almost 5 a.m., so I just stay awake, sitting in the armchair looking at the bed for what seemed like an endless amount of time. Eventually it's time to get up, take a shower and go grab breakfast and pack up. Co-worker and I never talk about this again. A few days later I did some research and it turns out we stayed at a haunted resort called Casa Monica. There have been many reports of hauntings there, especially on room 411 and 511. That night I slept in room 410. Fuck that place and fuck Florida. Can't even sleep without getting harassed by shadows and shit.
Oh, see here. This is something I heard from a relative. A bit of background. This happened in Southeast Asia and in Chinese funerals, or more specifically, those that follow Taoist funeral rites will tend to have things like paper houses, paper cars, paper money, etc. Basically, the idea is that you'll burn them and the dead will be able to use them in the afterworld. These days, things can be so elaborate and fancy that there's even paper cutouts of Gucci handbags or paper Lamborghini etc. Often, they'll also stick a paper talisman, pick-related, on them. Relative's family was attending a funeral. Have a small child with them. Did the usual praying, offer the bereaved condolences, stuck around for a bit to chat and catch up with others, then left. Weird things start happening at the house after that. Disembodied sounds of a small child laughing from somewhere that most definitely did not come from their own child. Their own child was sleeping in the living room, but then there'll be like sounds of another child running around from somewhere else. Sounds of bells, rolling, etc. At first family was like, it's probably nothing, the area is pretty noisy. The neighborhood's buildings are pretty packed as this was an old area, built before the days of proper gov regulations drawing up proper street lines/property lines, so people sometimes just extend their property too close to the next building and whatnot. Basically, sometimes depending on where you're at, you can even end up hearing your neighbor's conversation from next door since their window opens directly into yours. But then the grandmother, who is nearly blind, kept complaining about how she's trying to sleep, but the kid keeps playing in her room. Then when they point out their child is somewhere else and brought him in, the grandmother blurted out, "Why is there the presence of 2 kids when there's only 1 child in the family?" Family freaked out. Everyone was like, what the hell, did they bring something back from the funeral? How and why? Then the mother noticed some kind of paper thing they've never seen before lying among their child's toy box. Did a double take when she says some kind of yellow talisman stuck onto the thing. It was one of those paper offering made to look like those traditional Asian balls with bells and whatnot in them, called temori, pick in Japanese. Turns out while the adults were chatting during the funeral, the kid must have wandered off and grabbed it off another altar and brought it home. Everyone shitbricks when they realize what's going. Immediately bring that paper offering back to the funeral home. It was from an altar next to the one they were visiting. Yes, the family next door were mourning the death of their kid. Went to explain what happened, apologized and returned the offering, offered some prayers and left. No more weird child laughing and running sounds at home anymore. But the family was still spooked, so they ended up calling up a monk over to do a cleansing ritual some days later anyway.